Hey, what's up, you guys? FilmFan0599 here again, and welcome back to the universe of the Bluetubers. And today on Universe of the Bluetubers, I'm going to be reviewing Rise Against His Wolves. So, Rise Against His Wolves is a 2017 released album, and this is the band's 8th studio album. And, Rise Against is a punk rock band that I quite enjoy a lot. I wouldn't say I'm like a ginormous fan of them, like, oh, I absolutely love Rise Against. No, but I am a fan. I do quite enjoy their music. I do think they're a pretty solid band, in my opinion. Appeal to Reason and The Black Market are probably my two favorite albums from them. I do quite enjoy those albums a lot. So, going into Wolves, I was pretty excited for it because I did enjoy the lead single, The Violence, really a lot. So I was like, okay, I'm very excited to see where they go with this album. And I gotta say, Rise Against made a pretty solid album, in my opinion. I did quite enjoy Wolves. It is a good album, in my opinion. Wolves is very solid. I did quite enjoy this album. It is very good, in my opinion. Definitely solid. So let's get into what I liked about this album. First being the production on this album. The production is really good on this album, I think. The production is very solid. Tom McGrath, I believe that's how you say his name. He does a great job with his lead vocals on this album. I think he does an absolutely fantastic job. His vocals really work on this album a lot, and he just does a really great job with them. With songs like, especially with like Welcome to the Breakdown or Far From Perfect, just like songs like those, for example, just really has a nice vocal range, and really, his vocals really work for the songs that he presents himself in, and he does a really great job with them on this record. Zach Blair, the lead guitarist, he does a great job with his guitar work on this album, especially. He just does such a fantastic job. He really makes himself stick out on this album, especially with songs like The Violence, Far From Perfect. He really makes himself stand out on this album, and he does a really solid job with it, and he just does such a fantastic job. Really makes himself stand out on this album. Josh Principal, I believe that's how you say his name too. He's the bass player, really does a great job. The bass work is absolutely fantastic. He really tries to make himself stand out as well. So yeah, his bass work is very, very great. And Brendan Barnes, as he's the drummer, does a really great job with his drumming on this album. So yeah, the band does a really solid job with their, where their possessions are supposed to be and whatever, and they do a really solid job. So yeah, it really brings a lot of that punk energy into this album. So let's get into some of the songs that I did indeed like from this album. Let's first talk about the lead single off of this, The Violence. The Violence, I think, is definitely one of the best songs off of this album. It's such a great song, in my opinion, it really is. And, if you know Rise Against, they're very political. They get into, politics and all that. So, especially, with what's going on as of late, yes, definitely, they're going to write some songs about that. So, and The Violence is one of them. The Violence talks about how the band is kind of fearing World War III and will it come, you know what I mean? So, it's definitely a great song. I love the lyrics to it. The lyrics are very fantastic. Tom sounds absolutely great on that song with his vocals. The guitar work is fantastic when you hear that opening guitar riff with the damn, when you hear that. Absolutely great. It's just such a great tune. Definitely one of my favorites off this album, and definitely, really I can see why they went with this as the lead single, because it is a pretty great song, and I do love it a lot. So, yeah, The Violence was a song. So, and the next one is Welcome to the Breakdown. Welcome to the Breakdown is another great one. That has a great hook to it, a great chorus, in my opinion. The chorus is quite fantastic. It really is. I love the chorus to that song, especially when they would sing Welcome to the Breakdown. That was quite fantastic, really. I love that song a lot. Definitely a fantastic tune, in my opinion. I think by far my favorite song off this album is Far From Perfect. Far From Perfect definitely is another great track. I do think that is by far, in my opinion, the best track off of this album. I really do think so. When you hear that opening drum beat, it's fantastic. Like, I love that opening drum beat to it, and then, you know, you hear everything else coming into fruition, and then, you know, at the beginning part of the song, when, you know, Tom starts singing, you hear the guitar go. You know, you hear not the guitar, I'm sorry, the bass. You hear the bass line go, and it's quite great. I love the bass line with that tune. It's just so fantastic. I love the bass line with that song. It's really, really great. And I also, as another song, I love the lyrics to. And what I really gathered of what that song is kind of about, like, it's about, like, we're far from being a perfect nation, but you know what, we're great as we are. And, you know, so, yeah, we've got our flaws. We know we've got our flaws, but you know what? We're great as a nation, dang it. So that's what I really got out of the song, definitely from the lyrics. And definitely by far my favorite lyric in this entire song is when, you know, he goes, we're goddamn works of art. And then, you know, he just kind of goes, works of art. Like, it's just so fantastic. I love that song a lot. It's definitely by far my favorite track off of this album. The Closer is another one that I like a lot. Miracle, which is the last song off of this album. I do think that is a great closer and really wraps up the album kind of perfectly, in my opinion. Really wraps up the album quite greatly, in my opinion. Definitely is another great song and really wraps up the album very perfectly. Now, my only issues with this album are that, like, there are some points where I do think, like, I think there could have been a little bit more heavier tracks. I wish there were some more, like, a little bit more heavier tracks on this album. Like, they do go hard at some points on this, but there were some points where I was like, I just want some heavier tracks. Like, some heavier tracks, I wish there could have been, you know, especially with Rise Against and all that. Just wish there could have been a little bit more of heavy tracks. And there are some songs I don't think are as great, really. Like, songs like Wolves, the title track itself. Like, that, I know a lot of people like that track, but me, I just couldn't get into it. I really don't like the hook with that, or the chorus. Tom sounds alright on that song. Just, it's kind of a bland track. Same goes with House on Fire and Politics of Love. Those were another two songs that I did not like, really. Like, those are just kind of bland tracks. Like, the hooks on those are alright, and the choruses are okay, and the lyrics are just fine, really. Like, they're not really great tracks, in my opinion. They're not bad by any means, but just those three tracks were kind of just meh. Like, they're alright. Especially since Wolves and House on Fire are, like, the first two tracks off this album, so I kind of got worried a little bit. I was like, oh no, is this going to be a disappointment? Because literally the first two tracks weren't that great, but, you know, The Violence, which I already knew was going to be great because I've heard it before, and then Onward, it was, you know, it was starting to get much better. So, yeah. So, overall, Rise Against His Wolves, I do think is a solid album. I did quite enjoy it. It is definitely a good album, in my opinion, and I definitely say you should all give it a listen, because it is a solid album, in my opinion. Especially if you like, maybe punk music, you would definitely get a good kick out of this. So, yeah. So, it's time for my official rating on Rise Against His Wolves, and my official rating on Rise Against His Wolves is a solid 3 out of 5. I do think it's a solid album. I do think it is quite good. You know, Rise Against did put out a pretty solid album. I did quite enjoy it, so it definitely deserves a 3 out of 5. So, if you listened to Rise Against His Wolves, what did you think of it? Leave in the comment section below, and I'm FilmFan0599, and we'll see you all later. Peace.